My father never calls me. So when his name lit up on my phone screen at 10:43 p.m., I knew something was wrong. I was sitting at my kitchen table barefoot halfway through a glass of wine and a spreadsheet for work. The house was quiet, and the silence made his voice sound even colder. Alina, he said, tone clipped and rehearsed. I wanted to tell you something before you hear it from someone else. I froze. We hadn't spoken in weeks. Okay, I replied slowly. What's going on? He took a breath. I'm getting married tomorrow. To Lorraine. It's a small ceremony. Just family. My heart tightened. Lorraine. The woman who'd started showing up 6 months after Mom died. She was younger, loud, polished, and always made me feel like I was trespassing in my own house. And the house I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. Sold, he said. Close the deal today. And your car too. The old Volvo. Lorraine said it was time for a fresh start, and honestly, she's right. You're 34. It's time you moved on too. He said it as if we were discussing trimming a hedge. You sold the house? I whispered. While I was away. You weren't using it, he said. It's in my name anyway. Lorraine and I are moving to Florida. She found a condo near the beach. It's good for my blood pressure. I couldn't breathe. That house wasn't just wood and bricks. It was Mom's house, her garden, her books. Her scent still lingered in the hallway. She'd left it to me in writing. I was sure of it. You can't just, Alina, he interrupted. It's done. The paperwork is filed. I thought you should know. The new owners want to move in by next week, so you'll need to get your things out by Sunday. My car, I asked. Gone, he said. Lorraine's nephew took it. He needed something reliable. He's starting community college. My mouth went dry. That car was the only thing I had left from Mom. She gave it to me the day I landed my first job. She'd tied a red ribbon around the steering wheel. You gave it away. Don't make this emotional, he snapped. You never cared about these things when your mother was alive. You lived like a tenant in your own family. Don't act like you suddenly care now. And just like that, he hung up. I stared at the screen, watching his name vanish as if it had never been there. My chest burned not with sadness, but with something colder, deeper. Rage, betrayal, humiliation. They didn't just sell the house. They erased me from it. They sold off my past, my mother's memory, and the last pieces of a life I thought I had some place in. I closed my laptop. The spreadsheet could wait. The grief could wait. My father thought I was passive, weak, quiet. He had no idea. He'd taken everything except my mind, and I was going to use it. My name is Alina Morgan. I'm 34, single, and a project engineer for a firm that designs smart home systems. I work remotely mostly from the house my mother left behind, which I thought was still mine until 2 nights ago. People who meet me say I'm calm, polite, efficient. I've been called reserved more times than I can count. What they don't see is the engine that never stops running underneath. The questions, always turning the calculations I've trained myself to make silently. Because growing up in my family, silence was survival. I was never the favorite. That title belonged to my older sister, Caroline. She was the golden child, beautiful, articulate, always perfectly dressed. My father adored her. My mother loved us both, but it was Caroline who got the praise, the attention, the camera at every school play. I was the girl who read too much, spoke too little, and preferred coding puzzles to dinner conversations. I learned early that being overlooked was easier than being criticized. So I stayed quiet. I built my world in corners and journals behind closed doors. My father, Richard Morgan, was a man who believed in hierarchy, especially within the family. He ran our household like a CEO, complete with performance reviews disguised as family dinners. When Caroline made the honor roll, there were balloons and steak. When I won a statewide STEM competition, he said, "That's good, but don't let it distract you from learning how to cook." Caroline became a marketing executive in New York. She sent Christmas cards with smiling photos from the Hamptons and texts that always started with, "Hey, just checking in," but never led anywhere. After college, I stayed close to home. Not because I was afraid to leave, but because someone had to stay when Mom got sick. She was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 27. By then, Caroline was married with twins, and my father claimed he was too busy with the family business. So it was me. I drove her to chemo. I cooked when she couldn't eat. I changed sheets, managed medication schedules, argued with insurance companies, and sat beside her hospital bed until the machines stopped beeping. She passed away 2 years later. On the last night, she held my hand and whispered, "Don't let them push you out. This house is yours. I left it that way." I believed her. I trusted that she had made arrangements. After the funeral, my father told me there was no formal will, just a verbal agreement. "Your mother wouldn't have wanted you to get caught up in legal drama," he said. I was too shattered to question it. I let it go. I moved into the house, paid the bills, kept it up. I planted new roses in her garden, replaced the broken tiles in the foyer, learned how to maintain the HVAC system by watching YouTube videos. It was my way of holding on. I didn't realize I was only borrowing what was already mine. I paid property tax under my name. I submitted maintenance forms to the city. I repainted every room with colors she would have loved. My father never contributed a cent. He called once a month usually to ask about bank statements or to drop comments like, "You should really think about moving into a condo. Big houses aren't for single women." I smiled through it. I always smiled, even when it burned. Lorraine entered our lives 6 months after Mom passed. I met her once. She came to dinner wearing perfume that overwhelmed the room and asked if I planned to decorate the house more brightly. She made it clear that I was a leftover from a chapter she wanted to erase. My father beamed at her like she was a miracle. I left early that night and never went back. In the months that followed, I noticed strange things: mail missing, property tax notices addressed only to him. A neighbor mentioned seeing a real estate agent in the driveway. I asked my father once gently. He said, "You're imagining things. Don't be paranoid." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that being quiet had earned me trust. I was wrong. That call 2 nights ago proved it. He had been planning it all along, waiting for me to travel to be distracted. He'd timed everything perfectly, except for one thing. He assumed I wouldn't fight. That was his mistake. Because while Caroline was the star, I was the builder. I was the one who paid attention. I was the one who kept records. And now I was the one preparing for war. Quietly. Precisely. The way I've always done everything. This time not to survive, but to win. The morning after the call, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I made coffee, sat down at my desk, and opened a folder I hadn't touched in 2 years. It was labeled M.O.M., legal and personal. Inside were old utility receipts, hospital records, handwritten recipes, and a manila envelope I had almost forgotten about. It was sealed with her handwriting across the front, private, for Alina. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a copy of a will, not a draft, not a scribbled note, a formal notarized document with the name of her attorney, the date, and the clause I remembered her promising. "I hereby grant my daughter Alina Morgan full and irrevocable lifetime residence and stewardship of the property located at 128 Briar Lane. No sale, transfer, or occupancy shall occur without her written consent." It was signed 2 months before she passed. My chest burned. I checked the county property records online. According to the website, a new deed had been filed under Richard Morgan Family Trust, with a pending sale to a buyer named Neil Rasmussen. No doubt a Lorraine connection. The house had been listed privately, sold quickly, and scheduled to close within days, and my name was nowhere on the record. My car, I discovered next, had been registered to my father years ago for insurance purposes, but I had maintained it paid for its service and driven it exclusively since Mom gifted it to me. And now it was gone, given away like a used coat. I called the attorney listed on Mom's will. Her name was Angela Keene, and her firm was still active. She remembered my mother immediately. Olivia was very particular, she said. She insisted on that clause. She even made me double-check the wording twice. I told her what happened. She was quiet for a moment and then said, "Bring me everything you have. I'll help you file an emergency motion." I spent the next few hours gathering paperwork, scanning documents, backing up everything onto 2 external drives. Then I pulled the real trigger. I logged into the home's smart security system, the one I'd installed myself as part of a test project last year. Every room had a discrete camera, not because I didn't trust people, because I trusted no one. And there it was, 2 weeks ago, While I was in Seattle for a work conference, my father and Lorraine entered the house. He used the back key I had hidden under the porch steps, his old copy, the one I thought I had replaced. Lorraine walked through the hallway pointing at things. He opened the desk drawer in the study, pulled out a stack of documents, and placed them in a briefcase. No permission, no call, nothing. I downloaded the footage, marked the timestamps, and saved everything. This wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated. I wasn't going to knock on their door and ask for answers. I wasn't going to beg them to reverse anything. I had the will, I had video evidence, I had digital logs, email confirmations, tax receipts in my name, and a legal clause that made their transaction invalid. But most of all, I had clarity. For the first time in years, I saw everything without the fog of family expectation. I saw the game they'd played, the mask my father wore, the lie that if I stayed quiet, I'd be safe. They didn't expect me to fight, but that was about to change. I was 8 the first time I understood I didn't belong. It was Christmas morning, and my sister Caroline tore through wrapping paper like a whirlwind. She got a Barbie dream house, a karaoke machine, and a bracelet with her name engraved on it. I got a sweater 2 sizes too big and a used sketch pad with a coffee stain on the cover. She's more into books and quiet stuff, Dad said when I looked confused. She doesn't need flashy things. Mom said nothing that day, just looked at me with soft eyes that knew I was swallowing something I shouldn't have to. That was how it always was. Caroline was the center of gravity. I was the afterthought. She was praised for every achievement, every smile, every clever sentence. I was the one who knew how to stay out of trouble, the independent one, the easy child, until I wasn't. When I turned 13, Dad stopped asking me questions entirely. He and Caroline would talk about college tours and business internships while I sat in silence pretending to be engrossed in my book. Mom tried to balance it out in her way. She'd sneak me out to bookstores, leave little notes in my lunchbox, whisper, "You're enough," when no one was listening. I clung to her like a lifeline. She was the only one who saw the me beneath the silence. At 15, I won a regional science fair with a prototype for a solar-powered water filter. Mom hugged me and cried. Dad said, "That's nice, but don't forget your sister's SAT scores just came in." I learned then that achievement meant nothing without the right audience. So I stopped trying to impress him. I did my work, kept my head down, and dreamed of a world where being smart and quiet wasn't something to apologize for. When Mom got sick, I was 27 and finally building a career. Caroline had just moved into a high-rise in Manhattan, pregnant with twins, busy and unreachable. Dad stayed emotionally distant, burying himself in golf and important meetings. It was me who sat beside Mom during chemo. Me who clipped her hair when it started falling out in clumps. Me who cleaned the kitchen floor at 2 a.m. when she threw up and cried, "I'm so sorry," over and over. I wasn't sorry. I was angry. Angry that everyone expected me to carry the weight and called it strength. Angry that the one person who saw me fading was too weak to stop it. On the last night, she made me promise, "Don't let them take this house from you. Don't let them rewrite who you are." I nodded, barely able to speak. After the funeral, Caroline left before dessert. Dad said he'd handle everything, and I foolishly let him. I was tired, grieving, not ready for a legal fight. I believed there was decency left in him, but even then there were signs. When I moved in, he called it temporary. When I asked about the deed, he said, "We'll talk about it later." Later never came. Instead, Lorraine did. Shiny, confident, and terrifyingly efficient. She reorganized the kitchen the first time she visited. She called the living room outdated. She asked if I planned to stay here forever, like it was absurd. That night I overheard her whisper to Dad in the driveway, "She's clinging to the past. You'll never have peace with her still here." I wasn't supposed to hear that, but I did. I heard everything, and I remembered. Every slight, every time I was overlooked, every decision made without me. It built something inside me, slow, steady, sharp. Not bitterness, not exactly. More like fuel. Because the difference between me and them was simple. I had never taken anything that wasn't mine. And I was done letting them do it. The next morning, I sat across from Angela Keene in her office, a tidy space filled with legal books and sunlight that made the dust in the air look like floating ash. She flipped through the will Mom had left. Her brow furrowed, her lips tight. When she reached the clause about the house, my house, she nodded slowly. This, she said, tapping the paper, is solid. Olivia made her intentions clear. Your father had no legal right to sell that property without your written consent. I handed her the printed stills from the security footage, the logins, the timestamps, everything. Angela reviewed them with growing astonishment. He entered the home without your consent while you were out of town, she murmured, and removed documents. That's unauthorized access, at best criminal trespass, at worst. I leaned forward. They think I'll just disappear. They've been treating me like I'm in the way since the day Mom died. Angela looked at me, her voice lower now. We can file for an emergency injunction today. That stops the sale from closing. Then we challenge the deed transfer and notify the buyer. If he proceeds after seeing these documents, he becomes complicit. I nodded. Do it. By noon, we filed the injunction with the county clerk and notified the title company. The buyer, Neil Rasmussen, was emailed copies of the legal motion. By the next morning, he backed out. No explanation. Just a cold reply, no longer interested in proceeding. I wasn't surprised. Cowards tend to bail when things get complicated. That afternoon, I visited the local courthouse and submitted a formal complaint against Richard Morgan and Lorraine Gaines for will tampering and fraudulent conveyance of property. I included the security footage, sworn statements from neighbors who saw them entering the house while I was gone, and the notarized will. Angela guided me through each form like a steady hand on a ship in rough waters. Meanwhile, I changed all the locks. I upgraded the security system and installed new digital door sensors linked to my phone. I backed up everything, photos, receipts, conversations, onto 3 separate hard drives and a cloud server. Then I contacted a journalist I once worked with on a smart tech profile, someone who now ran a local investigative podcast. I didn't want revenge. I wanted exposure. I gave her everything. The betrayal, the false sale, the quiet erasure of a daughter who had done nothing but stay. I told her she could use it anonymously for now, with names to be confirmed after the hearing. She agreed. She called the episode The House She Was Promised. The teaser clip got 30,000 plays in 2 days. Comments poured in, stories from women who had been pushed out of family legacies, gaslit into silence, made to feel like squatters in their own homes. I read every single one. I wasn't alone. The next hit came through my inbox. A legal representative from the State Ethics Board had picked up the podcast. They were opening a preliminary inquiry into my father's business practices. Apparently, Lorraine had listed him as co-signatory on multiple property transfers involving elderly women who had since passed away. There was a pattern, a long one. I had lit a match and it was catching. Caroline finally called. Her voice was tight-clipped. "Alina, what the hell are you doing?" she said. "Dad's a wreck." Lorraine left. "His business is under investigation." I stayed calm. "He sold my house, lied about it, tried to erase me." "You're ruining our name," she snapped. "You could have handled this privately." He made it public the day he forged a will and handed my life over to a stranger. She was silent for a beat. "You've always been dramatic," she said finally. "And you've always been absent," I replied. Then I hung up. I wasn't angry, just done. Done hoping they'd see me. Done hoping someone would step in and stop the damage. I was the one stopping it. And I was just getting started. 3 days later, I received a certified letter from my father's attorney requesting a peaceful family meeting to resolve the dispute. I agreed, but only with my attorney present on neutral ground and with a full recording. Angela and I walked into the conference room of a downtown legal office at 900 a.m. sharp. My father was already there, looking thinner, older. Lorraine wasn't with him. Caroline sat at his side, arms crossed, eyes narrow. The lawyer, a man in a tailored gray suit, started first. "Ms. Morgan," he said, "it's our intention to avoid unnecessary litigation. Mr. Morgan believes this situation is the result of a misunderstanding." I placed a copy of Mom's original will on the table, highlighted and tabbed. "There's no misunderstanding. My mother granted me lifetime rights to the property. My father sold it behind my back without legal authority while I was out of state." Angela followed with printed stills from the surveillance footage, showing him entering the house, opening the study desk, and removing the envelope. The attorney frowned, clearly unprepared for this level of documentation. My father shifted in his seat. Alina, that footage doesn't tell the whole story. I was checking on the place while you were gone. Lorraine just wanted to help me sort some old documents. You mean erase evidence, I said calmly. You gave away the car, tried to sell the house, and transferred everything to a trust without telling me. You didn't just check on the place. You looted it. Caroline jumped in. This is getting out of hand. Do you know how humiliating it is to have our family name dragged through a podcast? Do you know how humiliating it is to be erased? I replied. To be treated like a guest in the house I helped maintain for years. I mowed the lawn, fixed the pipes, paid the taxes, while you were busy living your curated life with your perfect kids and New York brunches. My father leaned forward, his voice low. I did what I had to do. You never respected me. You always stayed in that house like you were guarding a shrine. It's unhealthy. No, I said it was the only healthy thing I had left after Mom died. And she left it to me because she knew you'd try to take it. Angela slid another document across the table. We're not just here to talk. We're filing a formal motion for full restoration of property rights damages for attempted fraudulent transfer, and a request for judicial review of Mr. Morgan's recent estate activities. We've submitted evidence of similar behavior involving 3 other widows, where Mr. Morgan acted as informal executor and benefited from asset liquidation. The lawyer blanched. You're suggesting a pattern of elder exploitation. We're not suggesting, Angela said. We're proving. The room fell silent. Then Caroline snapped. You're really going to do this to your own family? You did this, I said, looking her in the eye. When you left me alone to wipe up Mom's vomit, when you let Dad treat me like a squatter, when you told me to stay quiet because it's just easier that way. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The silence did the work. Angela opened her folder again. We've also obtained bank records showing a transfer of $42,000 from a joint account between Mr. Morgan and Lorraine Gaines to a private Florida account just days before the house was listed. Lorraine has been subpoenaed. If she doesn't appear, we'll assume financial collusion. My father stood abruptly. Enough. This has gone too far. It went too far when you signed my name off my own life, I said. And now I'm signing it back in. Caroline followed him out, muttering under her breath. I watched them go, feeling not triumphant, but clear. Like someone had opened a window in a sealed room. That night, Angela filed a motion to freeze all further transactions involving my father's name until the full audit was complete. The podcast picked up the story again. Downloads doubled. A woman from Ohio emailed me and said, "Thank you. My dad did the same." I thought I was crazy. I wasn't crazy. I was awake. And now everyone else was too. The court hearings began 2 weeks later. My father showed up wearing a navy blazer and forced dignity, but the cracks were visible. His lawyer tried to argue that the will was unclear, that Olivia had changed her mind verbally in her final weeks, and that the sale was done in the best interest of the family. But the documents didn't lie. The footage didn't lie. The bank transfers didn't lie. Angela presented everything in order, clean, methodical, irrefutable. The judge was unimpressed with their arguments. This is not ambiguity, she said at the end of the first session. This is a calculated attempt to undermine a legal directive. Caroline sat in the back row, her arms folded tight, jaw clenched so hard I thought it might snap. Lorraine never appeared. Her subpoena was returned unopened. Word had it she'd left the state. The Florida condo deal collapsed. The property title already contested was frozen by the state, and Neil Rasmussen issued a formal withdrawal along with a civil suit against my father for misrepresentation. He wanted damages for the time and money he lost, preparing for a fraudulent purchase. The DA's office opened a quiet inquiry into my father's business history. His reputation in the community, once untouchable, started to erode. Past clients pulled out. A few came forward anonymously claiming similar situations, unsanctioned reallocation of assets, quiet sales after deaths, always handled with a handshake and a thin smile. It wasn't enough to charge him criminally, but the civil pressure mounted. Meanwhile, the ethics board continued their investigation into my father's past transactions, especially the ones involving vulnerable individuals with no legal representation. They sent a letter recommending his removal from all remaining estate-related responsibilities, and advising a permanent restriction from acting as a fiduciary in future cases. The fallout was slow but steady. His network of trust dissolved, his credibility shattered. And Caroline. She sent me a single text 2 days after the second hearing. "You've made your point. I hope it was worth it." I didn't reply, because it was never about making a point. It was about protecting what was rightfully mine. It was about honoring a woman who spent her life being quiet and was nearly buried in silence. I received the final ruling in a plain white envelope. The judge confirmed that all actions taken to sell the house were nullified. The deed was reinstated in my name. The attempted car transfer was also reversed. The vehicle, now considered part of a fraudulent transaction, was legally returned to me. The court ordered my father to pay damages attorney fees and a fine for will tampering. It wasn't about the money, it was the signature at the bottom of that page, a legal acknowledgement that I was not invisible. I was the rightful heir. I was no longer the daughter in the shadows. And everyone now knew it. I stood on the porch of the house that weekend, looking at the garden Mom planted, the same one Lorraine had once suggested replacing with gravel. The roses were blooming again, deep red, unapologetic, stubborn as ever. I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, it felt like home again. Not haunted, not borrowed, mine. Entirely. Weeks passed. The noise quieted. The podcasts moved on to new scandals, the court orders were finalized, and the lawyers filed their last motions. Life began to settle, not back into what it was, but into something new, something earned. I repainted the study, not to erase what happened there, but to reclaim it. I opened the curtains wide every morning, let light pour in over the desk where Mom used to sit with her tea and her lists and her quiet strength. I planted a new row of lavender beside the roses. It was a small thing, but it felt like restoration, the kind of healing you don't announce but just do. I wasn't naive enough to think my father would change. He didn't call. He didn't write. Caroline sent a formal email through her lawyer proposing a reconciliation conversation in exchange for me not pressing further charges. I ignored it. My silence wasn't surrender anymore. It was control. It was peace. Lorraine vanished from every traceable platform. Her name stopped showing up in property transfers. Whatever dream of power she had tried to build with my father had crumbled into the ocean with the Florida condo that never came. Sometimes I wondered if she'd look back on this as a mistake or just a miscalculation. Either way, it didn't matter. Her story had exited mine. I took a short leave from work and spent it walking the coastline, sketching, breathing. I journaled every day, not to record events, but to make sense of the shift inside me. I had always been someone who waited for others to decide what I was worth. Not anymore. I reached out to the podcast journalist who had covered my story and asked if she'd let me do a follow-up piece. She agreed. I wrote it myself, an open letter to women who had been quietly erased from family decisions, from inheritance, from legacy. I called it The Daughter Who Stayed. It went viral, not explosively, but steadily. Thousands of comments poured in from women nurses, artists, lawyers, mothers, daughters, all telling stories of being written out, talked over, cut out of homes they helped build. Some cried, some raged, all of them thanked me. Not because I was brave, but because I proved it could be done. That fighting back didn't mean becoming someone else. It meant finally becoming yourself. One evening, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and the final letter Mom wrote me. I'd read it dozens of times, but that night, I saw something I hadn't noticed. A sentence near the end, nearly faded. If you ever wonder if you were right to stay, remember, this house didn't survive because of its walls. It survived because of you. I smiled. I wasn't just a daughter anymore. I was a woman who stood her ground, used her mind, and reclaimed what others tried to erase. The house was more than shelter now. It was a declaration, a monument to quiet resistance. And to every woman who's ever been told she was too soft, too quiet, too invisible, I want to say this. They're wrong. You are not fragile. You are not forgettable. And when the time comes, you will not be erased. My name is Alina Morgan. I am 34 years old. I am the legal owner of the house at 128 Briar Lane. I am my mother's daughter. I am not the one who left. I am the one who stayed, and I would choose it again.